Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Tom and Swain, and all of you here at Coastal Carolina who helped in putting this on today. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate. It's been a terrific forum. You know, for someone who spends their entire professional life on natural gas, it's great to hear a dialogue of folks from the regulator, legislative, academic, industry, really every level of engagement, really discussing an important issue, and I think just one of the critical stories of the past decade in America. So, a little bit about America's Natural Gas Alliance. You've heard really the story of going from scarcity to abundance in the United States. You've heard the story of a 41% increase in natural gas production over the past decade. And what you've really heard at the core is a story of innovation and a story of disruptive technology. When we think about those terms, we typically think of the tech sector. We think about social media. We think about companies like Facebook and Google and Apple, who've totally disrupted the way that we've communicated with each other for generations. They've completely changed that in a short period of time. Well, that's what's happened in this industry. A decade ago, we were in a position of energy scarcity. We were in a position of being reliant on, in some cases, countries that were not our strategic allies for our energy resources. And as a result of technology, as a result of innovation, as a result of the innovators and leaders at the companies that you're looking at, we've completely changed. We've had a paradigm shift in this country. We've completely changed our energy, our environment, and our economy. It is truly one of the tremendous stories of the past decade. So a bit about ANGA. In the midst of that story, these innovators saw that we were going to see this transformation of increased production. But what they also had a vision for was that we would need a way to have demand outlets for this gas. We would need to find additional markets. We would need to grow existing markets in order to continue the momentum of these shale plays that Jim and Hopper and others have talked about today. So they formed this group, America's Natural Gas Alliance, a coalition of leaders in the natural gas industry, the large independent natural gas producers that are really responsible for this shale gas revolution. The mission of the organization is very simple: to increase the use of and demand for natural gas, to grow markets for natural gas use around the country. Let me talk about how we do that. So we promote natural gas use in the following sectors: power generation, transportation, industrial and manufacturing, and LNG exports. As Jim mentioned, really the goal in the power generation space is to show that natural gas is the baseload fuel of choice for the future. You hear a lot about the regulatory environment in Washington, D.C. really driving the environment toward greater use of natural gas. You see the increased production driving price down and also driving generators to natural gas. Well, what we're saying is we do have the abundant supply to be able to move generators to natural gas as a baseload fuel of choice. The second large market segment is LNG exports. We see a potential for, you heard earlier this week from the U.S. Department of Energy Information Administration say that by 2017, the United States is going to be a net exporter of natural gas. That is huge news. Swain mentioned Elba Island and Cove Point in Maryland. I visited both of those facilities when I was a staff member in Congress, in the Senate. And I visited those because of the it's less than 10 years ago. I visited those because of the exciting opportunity we would have to import natural gas. Less than a decade later, we're talking about those facilities, and I just had the opportunity to visit Cove Point for a groundbreaking on their use of that facility to export natural gas. It is really a paradigm shift. It is really a great opportunity. And so we view LNG exports really as the second biggest market segment to grow natural gas demand around the world. You heard Jim talk earlier about the Marcellus and Utica production. Interestingly enough, we've been talking about natural gas all day. I don't think anyone has stated the obvious. The United States is the largest producer of natural gas in the world, which is an amazing thing. Well, as Jim said, the largest field in the United States and the greatest, most prolific sources of natural gas is in the Marcellus. Marcellus Shale, which really spans across most of Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and sadly to say parts of New York, though I don't think they know it. The Marcellus Shale, you've seen tremendous production increases. In 5 years, you've seen production grow from 2 billion cubic feet of natural gas to 16 billion cubic feet of natural gas. That is just tremendous growth. In the Utica, you see growth even faster. In a period of less than 3 years in the Utica, you saw production grow from 155 million cubic feet of natural gas to 1.3 billion cubic feet of natural gas. There's just a tremendous growth, and it seems like it's stating the obvious, but what comes with that production? I mean, Jim talked a lot about what comes with that production. It's economic growth all the way down the value chain within the natural gas sector, but also within segments of the economy beyond the natural gas sector. You go to these towns, you see new hotels, you see new car dealerships, you see new homes, you see new hospitals, you see new schools. That is all the result of an increased tax base, an increased revenue base, an increased economic growth base from the natural gas industry and natural gas production. It is a tremendous story. Let's talk a bit about consumption. I talked about the market segments earlier. This gives you a good picture from the EIA about how we use natural gas in this country today, and how they estimate we're going to be using natural gas into the future. Again, you see large increased potential in the electric power sector and in LNG exports. Transportation, though, it gets a lot of public attention, the use of natural gas in the transportation sector. The potential growth there in that market segment is significantly smaller than the other areas. We do see potential for increased use of natural gas in the high horsepower sectors of transportation, specifically a lot of interest from carriers in the marine space and in the rail space. And we work very hard at ANGA to promote those sectors. There's a lot of public interest, but again, it is a relatively small segment for potential growth. But again, in the electric power sector, in LNG exports, tremendous opportunities to grow natural gas use. And then in the industrial sector, I could take a couple of minutes on that. I think the important thing to note about industrial use of natural gas, when most people hear the story about companies bringing jobs back to the United States, bringing manufacturing back to the United States for a myriad of reasons. Certainly labor costs, the gap in labor costs has certainly closed in some of the developing to developed countries. with respect to the United States. But low-cost natural gas is the single biggest contributor to bringing those jobs back to the United States. And it's not just an energy source. It is also a feedstock. And so as we produce more natural gas, we produce along with it natural gas liquids that are essentially feedstocks for the chemical fertilizer industries in the United States and have provided incredible growth in those sectors. It is really one of the untold stories in this shale gas revolution. You've seen this slide updated this week to capture the Potential Gas Committee's new numbers. As Jim said, we do have 100 years. We do have more than 100 years of supply of natural gas at today's technology. And in fact, we have over 1,500 trillion cubic feet of natural gas at $5 and below. But you know, public-private industry estimates anywhere from essentially 2,800 to 3,900 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. To put this in perspective, we use 27 trillion cubic feet of natural gas a year. So we have the gas. The challenge is to find the markets and to establish and maintain the infrastructure to get that gas to market. And again, as I mentioned, it's not just the economic benefits that come with bringing that gas to market. It's also tremendous environmental benefits on the other side, including reductions in SOx, NOx, particulate matter, carbon dioxide emissions, mercury. The President is about halfway to his goals of reducing carbon dioxide under his climate action plan. And much of the credit for that is the shift in power generation from coal to natural gas, and the administration has noted that. And we do have the supply to continue that increased power generation use. The demand opportunity, the chart you're looking at, basically out from today to 2040, based on both EIA and internal ANGA analysis, shows the potential for demand in a series of from low to high economic growth, and then the base case. We believe that there's more than 10 TCF, 10 billion cubic feet of natural gas increased potential in growth based on a series of factors to drive demand. We think both from the regulatory environment, from potential decisions made in Congress, and at the regulatory agencies, you can see an even greater potential for use of gas. The energy policy debate. So, as you all know, in November, there was a shift in the leadership in the Senate in Washington. And as a result, now Republicans control both houses of Congress, and the Democrats control the White House. And so we do have a split government. But I think there is a big sense that there are areas of opportunities for for Congress and the White House to work together. We've seen it already in the first few months of the new Congress. Just this past week, a significant Medicare reform was passed overwhelmingly, supported by both Speaker Boehner and Minority Leader Pelosi, and both leaders in the Senate as well. Truly, in the healthcare space, a very significant vote. You see in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee a vote on a bill on Iran sanctions, a very significant bipartisan accomplishment. You saw a budget pass in the last month, and I think you see areas on free trade where both the administration and Congress have spoken about their willingness to work together. I think on energy policy it's possible as well. Both the House and Senate leadership and committees of jurisdiction have signaled their willingness to pass comprehensive energy legislation. We haven't passed comprehensive energy legislation since really the Energy Policy Act of 2005, Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act of 2006, then the Energy Security and Independence Act of 2007, and it sort of dropped off. We really haven't passed comprehensive energy legislation since those 3 years. And again, this is with the backdrop of this energy dynamic that you heard today. So things have changed. Policies need reforming. Many of the policies that were drafted 10 years ago were drafted for a totally different environment. And so we're hopeful that Congress is able to pass some legislation. What we're specifically interested in, our member companies, you hear consistently an expedited LNG export approval process. That's too slow to non-free trade agreement countries. Some of our oil-producing members, as well as the organization, believes that we should lift the crude oil export ban. Again, a ban put in place for a time that's very different from today. We'd like to see the promotion of infrastructure around the country. We believe, particularly in the Northeast, this week the Federal Reserve even noted the lack of energy infrastructure in the Northeast has caused prices to rise, electricity prices to rise in New England. So this is a really important issue. This is an issue that can stifle the shale revolution if we don't get it right. And we need to be able to, both at the state level and federal level, figure out a rational, reasonable policy approach to getting pipelines built and constructed and moving gas around this country. Here are some of the regulations that just kind of a subset of the larger series of regulations that the industry faces and is focused on. Jim talked quite a bit about methane emissions. The EPA has announced plans to regulate new or modified sources of methane on producers. I can tell you from the producer standpoint, we believe that we have made tremendous strides in the reduction of methane emissions. I'll show a chart in a little bit that shows the reductions that we've achieved, 17% reductions, while at the same time 38% increase in production. That's significant methane emission reductions through a voluntary effort and as a co-benefit of other regulations. We're going to keep continuing to work on that issue because ultimately we want to be good stewards of the environment. We think that's a corporate priority for all of our members. And secondly, it's an economic issue. That's our product. That's natural gas, and so we want to capture that methane, and we want to get it to market. The ozone standard, something that manufacturers across the country are very concerned about, a reduction in the ozone standard at EPA. And then, say, the 111D rulemaking under the Clean Power Plan is probably the most significant rulemaking that our industry faces right now. It is we're as an organization, ANGA neither supports nor opposes the regulation. We say that natural gas should be the compliance tool for states around the country as they think about how they're going to comply with EPA's rule. And we think it's a tremendous opportunity to, again, drive demand and increase our market share in power generation. So this chart just shows you the vast number of pipeline projects around the country. It kind of builds on what Jim showed you earlier. This issue, Jim and I talk about this all the time. This is the most important issue for our members. for ANGA's members, for many of our companies, and I think for policymakers to wrap their arms around. You know, as you saw in the supply slides, we have the gas. The issue is getting it to market, and so pipelines are critical to that. And finally, a word about ANGA and our advertising campaign. So at America's Natural Gas Alliance, we have a very robust communications operation. Everything from television advertising to print advertising to social and digital media to earned media. And we center that around a campaign called Think About It. We drive 2 million, in 2 years we've driven 2 million visitors to our website, to the Think About It website, where we educate consumers and voters and, you know, average everyday Americans about the abundance of natural gas, the affordability, the reliability, and ultimately all of those benefits that I was talking about that come from greater use of natural gas. We partner with great corporate partners like UPS and Florida Power and Light and Los Angeles County, who turned their bus fleet over to natural gas, to tell a story, the story that you've heard today from many of the people speaking about this abundance and about all of the economic and environmental benefits that have flowed from it. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Tom.